It's really weird.
Right.
Back to today's top story, and 3 Aussie activists are being held captive after boarding a Japanese whaling support vessel off the coast of WA. We're going to speak to the captain of Sea Shepherd Alliance in just a few minutes. But first, a few weeks back, we sent Julian Schiller to meet the people who are fighting on the front lines to put a stop to Japanese whaling.
Last year, they sent the Japanese fleet packing, made the FBI and Interpol's watch list and saved over 1,900 whales. This year, Paul Watson and the Sea Shepherd intend to put an end to whaling forever.
We're going to take a more aggressive approach this year. When we say we're going out to risk our lives to protect the whales, it's not a slogan for us. We mean it.
This vessel, the Bob Barker, is made up of 33 hardcore activists. And then there's me. We're just leaving Sydney Harbour on the way to Hobart. For me, it's only 5 days of training drills, but for the crew of the Sea Shepherd, it's a fierce battle with Japanese whalers lasting 3 months on the Southern Ocean. And the woman who leads this year's expedition down to the Antarctic is Andrea Gordon.
For the upcoming campaign, Operation Divine Wind, Sea Shepherd is aiming to stop whaling in the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary.
The Sea Shepherd receives about 4,500 requests every year from volunteers willing to sacrifice their time and lives for the cause.
I'm willing to go down there and to risk myself to make a stand against the illegal whalers down there, and yeah, I'm fine with that.
There's not much point having these treaties and these agreements and these rules if no one's out there making sure they're upheld.
In order to prepare for the campaign, the volunteer crew has been doing lots of training and drills, including boat launching practice, boat maneuvering, man overboard, fire safety, and rescue swimmer training.
I'm on one of the fast boats going parallel to the Bob Barker. These are the main weapon that Sea Shepherd deploy for direct contact with the Japanese whaling fleet. We found out just how vital these training exercises are when a crew member fell overboard during a boat launching drill.
It has to be considered to be a serious incident. The last thing you want is someone over the side, particularly it was a little bit choppy. It's very hard to identify someone in the water. It's not to be over-dramatised, but serious business.
And being on the front line, these eco-warriors know just how serious it can be. Last season, Ben Potts boarded the Yushin Maru 2, delivering a letter requesting they end whaling and leave immediately.
You know, we were virtually sort of held hostage on their vessel. Gave me the opportunity to talk to them. One of the young whalers was like, no good job, no good money. And I think they understood, you know why we were there.
Despite last year's success in Antarctica and their ever-growing global support, not everyone is in favour of the Sea Shepherd.
Sea Shepherd would not be the most popular people down in the Southern Ocean, so people are going to be reluctant to come and help you too.
Sea Shepherd is entirely funded by donations. We do not get any government support, and everything on the ships is either directly donated or purchased with donations.
Just being on board the Bob Barker, you really do get a sense nothing will break the spirit and camaraderie of the crew.
The spirit, as you can see last night when we're all playing music and together, is that diversity is key, and regardless of our differences, as long as we all have the same passion and the same drive towards this one goal, that we can achieve it.
Whilst it's their full contact approach that is having the most effect, ultimately it's the heart and soul of the Sea Shepherd that will one day hopefully put an end to whaling in the Southern Ocean.
We've always gone in there with less experience, less resources, less money, and we always manage to succeed.
There's no way that the Japanese whalers can compete with our passion and determination to stop them.
There is no time when you can sit back and say, well, we've done our bit. The only time the bit is done is when there are no whaling ships going into Antarctica.
Obviously filmed before recent developments. Now, it's hard to fault the mission or the passion of the Sea Shepherd crews, but the events of the weekend certainly took a darker turn. Captain Paul Watson joins us on Skype from the Steve Irwin to talk about it. Paul, 3 Aussies are now captive aboard the Shonan Maru 2. What they did was certainly a provocative act, but who exactly were they trying to provoke, the Japanese whalers or the Australian government?
Probably both. I think they're quite frustrated at the fact that this government has been talking tough for years about dealing with the whalers and has done very little. And the election promises made by Peter Garrett were that they were going to shut down whaling in the Southern Ocean, and we're not even getting close to that with the government's efforts.
Well, the Australian government says it is going to do everything it can to help free these 3 Australians, but what's going to happen if they do have to face a Japanese court?
Well, we do have the evidence that they were taken within the contiguous zone where Australian Immigration and Customs has absolute authority. They had no legal right to take those people out of that zone without customs clearance. But when the Australian government says they're going to do everything they can, I'm rather cynical about that. They said the same thing about ending whaling in the South Ocean. They were going to do everything they could.
But don't they bear some responsibility for their own actions, Paul?
Of course they do. We all bear responsibility for our actions. It's too bad that we have to be doing these things. If the Australian government and the US and the New Zealand and the British and all the other signatories to the IWC would simply uphold international conservation law, it wouldn't be individuals that are down there doing this. But when governments make promises and don't follow through on those promises, it's up to the citizens to express themselves in whatever way they possibly can.
George Negus, Paul, it sounds to me like I'm a bit confused. Who are you more pissed off with, if you like? The Japanese or the Australians? Because you're really putting the boot in the Australian government. It sounds like they're the enemy. They're the whaling demons, if it's like it. Who is the enemy in this current state of your brawl?
The forest rescue people who boarded the Shonan Maru were upset with the fact that the Australian government was not fulfilling their pre-election promises. Of course, our concern is with the Japanese whalers and how they're being allowed to continue their illegal activities. They're targeting endangered whales in a sanctuary in violation of a moratorium. If this was Africa and they were shooting elephants like this, they would be shot for what they're doing. But because they're in Japan and they're wealthy and they're not black and they're not poor, they're doing whatever they want and getting away with it.
Mate, do you have contact with the guys on the ship? Are they okay?
We don't know. They're being held incommunicado. We did give them radios. They were obviously taken away from them, and I don't believe even the Australian government's in contact with them. So we have no idea. We do know they're on that vessel, and they're almost 200 miles south of Australia right now.
Last year, Sea Shepherd managed to shut down the whaling season altogether. Do you expect to be able to achieve the same this year?
Well, so far, we've got a pretty good record. They haven't killed a single whale. So the season's going really well. And Bob Barker has had them on the run now for 2 weeks, and we'll be rejoining them and hopefully keeping them on the run and preventing them from killing whales. They may kill a couple, but they're certainly not going to get near their quota.
Well, Paul, fingers crossed for the safe return of the Aussies, and also fingers crossed that no whales get killed this year.
OK, thank you.
It's a bit unfortunate that something as important as this in the long run just has become this annual theatre that goes on with the details changing year by year. There's got to be some way that the International Whaling Commission or somebody says, listen, why don't we just sit down and talk about this? This is getting quite ridiculous and somebody's eventually going to get really hurt.
They are great at getting publicity, though, aren't they?
Nobody doubts, as Charlie said, their passion or their commitment, and they are getting somewhere. But the Japanese are just as determined as they are, the Japanese whalers at least. But I think he's right. The Australian government should be getting into the Japanese government saying, this is getting crazy, guys.
They're polarising figures, though. We've got some feedback.
Yeah, we've got some viewer feedback. Viewer Sir Christopher says the idiots jumped on illegally, face the consequences.
And Amir tweets, the Japanese have only caught the activists for research purposes. Well, what does that mean? Now, it's Australian law has come into this, hasn't it? Yep. I mean, and who's in charge of law in Australia at this point in time? Well, the woman herself actually let everyone know today.
Yes, thank you very much for coming this afternoon. My name's Nicola Roxon and I'm the Attorney-General. Thank you very much for coming this morning. My name's Nicola Roxon, I'm the Attorney-General, but I am talking to you today as the Acting Health Minister.
That second clip was actually yesterday, to be honest. She's the Attorney-General and that's it, and that's how she's going to go from now on.